This is Lesson 5 using pivot tables and pivot charts starting on page 147. You've already seen the way Microsoft Office Excel functions and how features such as sorting, filtering, and summary functions can help you drill down into your data to get answers to very specific questions. Although using these features is often a good option for attaining specific answers, these aren't necessarily the best options if you need to frequently change the questions you're asking of your data. To change the question you're asking when using functions, sorting, and filtering, you often need to rewrite functions, adjust criteria, or refilter your data. Sometimes you even need to use several of these methods at the same time. You certainly could take this route, but it isn't the most efficient way to re-query your data to get the variety of answers you need. If you work in a high-paced, data-intensive environment, you simply may not have the time needed to recalculate every time a supervisor asks you a different question. You need something a little more dynamic. Excel includes a powerful feature that enables you to ask any number of questions of your data, get detailed, specific answers, and do it all over again in just a matter of moments. By taking advantage of this functionality, you can get critical, time-sensitive organizational intelligence to the people who need it quickly, easily, and with a high level of flexibility. In this lesson, you will analyze data with pivot tables, pivot charts, slicers, and timelines. You will create a pivot table, analyze pivot table data, present data with pivot charts, and filter data using timelines and slicers. So topic A on page 146 is creating a pivot table. To take advantage of the functionality and flexibility of pivot tables, you must first understand how to create them. Although this is a relatively simple process, you must also know a bit about the type of data that works best for pivot tables. By taking a few moments to gain this foundational level of understanding, you'll be preparing yourself to create useful, effective pivot tables that you can use to analyze your raw data in incredibly fine detail. So to start off, pivoting is a way to manipulate, rotate, or turn large amounts of data into a summarization of that data. Pivot tables are data objects that enable you to analyze data by pivoting columns and rows of raw data without altering it. Once you create a pivot table, you can repivot, resort, resummarize, and refilter your data any number of times without affecting the original data set. Alright, so let's start with the basics of how to create a pivot table. Here on my Data Worksheet tab, I have some raw transactional data. And transactional data is not summarized in any way, and it does not contain any row labels. It only has column labels along the top. Each row in my transactional data is considered an entry going across. So I want to be clicked anywhere inside of my data set. So this is a contiguous data set. There's no empty cells, no empty rows, no empty columns. And I'm going to go up to my Insert tab on my ribbon, and in my Tables command group, I'm going to select my Pivot Table command. This opens the Create Pivot Table dialog box. Here I have the option Select a Table or Range. And in the Table Range field box, it automatically puts the range of my data set. So it starts from the beginning, it sees the empty columns and stops there. It sees the empty rows and stops at the bottom. So my range here is on my Data Worksheet, the range A1 through K731. The second option along the bottom allows you to select where you want the pivot table placed. You can choose on a new worksheet, or you can choose an existing worksheet that you already have created. So I'm going to do a new worksheet for my pivot table and click OK from here. So along the left here, an empty pivot table is created on a new worksheet, And also the pivot table field's task pane is open towards the right. The top part of my task pane, the choose fields to add to report, lists all fields from your data set. And these come from the column headings of that data set from our data worksheet. So these are all the column names. Then along the bottom, the drag fields between areas below has 4 areas. We have a filters area, columns, rows, and values. And you drag your fields into these different sections. And this will configure how your pivot table will be laid out. So you can actually click off, you can check off one of these fields. When you check them off, Excel will automatically place them for you into an area, but it may not be the area that you want it to go into. You can also just click and drag and drop them into the areas as well, which might be better. So your 4 areas here, we have the filters area, and you drag fields here to include field values as filter criteria for your pivot table. Your columns area, you drag fields here to create columns out of your unique entries. Your rows area, drag fields here to create rows out of the unique entries. And your values area, you drag fields here to have Excel perform calculations on or summarize the value. So first, suppose you wanted to see how many transactions each sales rep's made per region. We could bring our region field, click and drag that into our rows area, and we could bring our sales rep into our value area, because that's the field that we want to count. So you can see it makes rows out of our regions, Midwest, Northeast, South, and so on, and it counts the number of sales reps in each of those regions, because that's what I put into my values section. Now suppose I clicked and dragged my sales reps into my columns, and in my values section I wanted my total sales. Click and drag that and drop it into values. Now I can see the total sales based on per region for each sales reps. So I'm quickly and easily able to extract information that I wouldn't necessarily be able to calculate very quickly in this large data set. So it pivots, it rotates information, it summarizes information for you, and again, makes it very easy to extract that, to answer questions that you may have about large data sets of information. So suppose I wanted to quickly know the total sales of each product. I can click and drag to bring these out. I'll keep total sales in values, and I'll bring my product line into my rows. So now I have my total sales for each product. It's not showing my region anymore. It pivoted to show the information that I put in my rows area now. So again, quick way to extract different information. And you can change the number formatting of this in your values, which we'll take a look at in one of our next videos. We can open our value field settings, and here I have my number format, and I could change that to currency with no decimal points if I wanted to. And it will update there. It will update the whole entire table for you. So that is an option if you want it to be. Right? Your next video will be Activity 5.1 on page 155.